Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another amazing guest. I was very, very fortunate and privileged to be able to share a virtual stage with this guy and at a recent conference. And when I heard him speak, I go, wow, this guy's amazing. He knows his stuff. And I couldn't wait to ask him to be on my show. And here he is today. He is somebody who really teaches his clients and his students about making decisions based on value, not on your fears, not on your bank account. He's helped hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, from athletes to leaders to entrepreneurs and also actors as well. And he helps good people build strong, profitable lives and also achieve extraordinary goals. So please welcome international coach, the creator of Profit for Coaches podcast host, Jos Willard.
Thanks, Fong. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So just to get started, I just want to know, how did you get to become Jos, the coach?
Jos, the coach. Shorter version. I was that kid in school that would get phone calls at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning on school nights from people that I didn't know saying, you're so-and-so who's a friend of so-and-so. And they go like 3 or 4 names deep before you start recognizing people. They say you're a good person to talk to, right? And so you'd wake up and you'd just like pound the caffeine, 3 or 4 cans of Pepsi or whatever. And you're like, okay, talk. And, I was the guy that'd be walking down the hallway and the girls would grab you and go, Jos, come here. I want to ask you about what I should do about my relationship with so-and-so or whatever. Right. So it started with that. Then I grew up in Alaska, so colder and snowier even than Edmonton. So I joined the Army to get out of Alaska. I was trained to jump out of airplanes and blow up tanks, but I messed up my knees in jump school. And while I was serving in Korea, they made me a chaplain's assistant. And everyone assumed that that meant you drove the chaplain around and filed paperwork kind of stuff. Turns out that you do that, but you also are a counselor. They call it pastoral counseling. So I ran the Alcoholics Anonymous groups. I ran the interfaith prayer groups. I did a lot of counseling and support for soldiers who were dealing with PTSD, soldiers that were thousands of miles away from their family, that kind of stuff. And this was in the early 90s. So internet was AOL dial-up. So you basically had to go with what you knew and read some books. So I learned very quickly how to do sort of counseling and coaching sort of for real. And then transferred out of there after a year and a half. Became what they call a training NCO, which means that I was responsible for training large groups of soldiers and getting them where they needed to go to be trained and that kind of stuff, and learning all that kind of fun stuff. Eventually got out of the Army. And from then on, no matter what I tried to do, whatever my job description actually was, I always wound up training, coaching, counseling. Did not matter what I was supposed to be doing. I was always in that role. So eventually I kind of picked up what the world was putting down in front of me, God, the universe, whatever, and said, okay, I'm going to be a coach. And so started doing that. And I guess we're 27-ish years now into coaching and consulting and training. So yeah, that's kind of what's gotten me here. I've done relationship coaching, trained with Gottman and a bunch of other stuff like that. Strategic intervention, studied a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy just to use some of the tools. I'm not a therapist. Don't ever want to be a therapist. But yeah, that's in 2013, I think, is when I officially started in the business coaching world, like as a business coach, working with a buddy of mine who had a coaching franchise, and worked with him for a couple of years. We got really good results with our clients, to the point where the company that he was franchised through called us up to ask what our secrets were, because we were getting really great results. And he said, well, part of it is that Jos and I work together. And they said, oh, well, he's not certified in our methodology. And we're like, no, he doesn't coach your methodology. I coach our methodology. He coaches his stuff, and together it works really well. And they're like, well, if he's not going to pay us basically $50,000 US, plus agree to ongoing monthly payments and percentages of the clients within the next 6 weeks, we're going to pull your franchise. So they threatened to pull my partner's franchise. Oh. So at that point, I didn't really feel like I needed to get their certifications, but he didn't want to lose his franchise. So at that point we parted ways. So in about 2015 is when I put out my shingle as Jos Willard business coach from there. So
cool. Now, it sounds like you kind of said that for your entirety of your life, you've been the go-to person for advice, for guidance. If that wasn't there, what would you have become?
So my original plan when I joined the Army was I was going to go jump out of airplanes for 2 or 3 years and then let the Army pay for my law degree and go back and be a lawyer for the JAG Corps for the Army for, I think it would have been 6 years after that. And then go be a politician or a lawyer at the World Court or something like that. I was going to do something in law. I don't know that I still would have gone down that road, because even before joining the Army and becoming the chaplain's assistant and kind of getting into that into things, when I was going to university and studying international relations and politics, I realized pretty quickly that I really enjoyed the game that is law and politics. And so I decided that I needed to quit. I needed to get out of that because I was afraid I was going to lose my soul, because there's just, you know, it was in a Model UN or something like that. And somebody pulled some really slick move on me. And like, if I had actually been representing the people that I was representing and standing on principle, I'd have been so angry. I'd have been upset. I'd have probably stormed out, whatever. But I found myself just going, wow, that was so good. Like he totally set that up and got me, and just admiring how he played the game. And it was then that I went, wait, no, that's not the proper response. It shouldn't be admiring how the game is played. It should be, you know, this was wrong. What do I do about it? So I don't know that I would have continued down that road, but it was definitely where I was headed prior to joining the Army.
So at a very, very early stage, you already jumped into entrepreneurship in a way.
Yeah.
So is it true that for somebody who's gone through military, jumped out of airplanes and done all that kind of stuff, is it easier? Does it make you go, you know what, I've done that. Going into business is a piece of cake.
I think it's a tool that you could use it to make it easier. I didn't always, and not everybody does, right? Like, so there's a book by, I think Nick Hall is the author's name, called I Know What to Do, So Why Don't I Do It? And he talks about in there, one of his principal phrases is, I am glad that I am not, right? So whenever you're struggling or feeling like overwhelmed or whatever in a negative situation, you can say to yourself, I'm glad that I am not blank, right? And he got that from interviewing a bunch of people who had gone through terrible things in their lives and then had gone on to accomplish great things. And almost without exception, every single one that he talked to, when he said, how did you get through doing these, you know, how did you accomplish these things? They all basically said, after going through this terrible thing, I knew that at least I wasn't going through that. And so what you can do is you can say, well, like in my case, regardless of what I'd be going through here in business, I could say to myself, well, I'm glad that I am not sleeping outside in a super thin sleeping bag just 100 yards south of the DMZ in Korea in the wintertime, right? Because that was a terrible experience. Or I'm glad that I'm not road marching 25 miles through a monsoon, which I did, because I've had those experiences. So you could do that and it could make it easier. But I don't think whether you've had that massive experience, I don't know that that automatically makes it easier, because it's really easy to go, I've been through this, they all sucked, and now I'm here at this thing and it sucks too, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Now, for somebody who talks about decision making and how decision making should be based on your values and not your fears, not your bank account, would you care to elaborate that some more? Because I know lots of people don't do that.
No, and we could be here for hours on this one. So we all like to think that we make decisions from our values, but most of the time we make our decisions based on our fears. And to a certain extent, I mean, I would say based on your bank account, that's a subset of based on your fears. Or we actually are making decisions from our values. We just don't realize which values we actually have, right? So when someone says, for example, I value eating sustainably. I want to make sure that when I make my food choices, I'm making the best possible choice for the world, for the environment, for me, whatever it is. The value is I'm going to eat good foods. And then they go and they buy, they just buy food from the store, right? They just go and they go to the grocery store, they buy whatever meats they want to buy from the grocery store, say. And then you go, okay, well, you said that your biggest concern is eating well for yourself as well as for the planet. Well, the foods that you're buying at the grocery store, the meats that you're buying at your grocery store they're all corn and wheat fed, which is terrible for the environment because of the monocropping that's involved. The type of fat content that in them is bad for your body. Like there's all these things that high inflammation things that come into your body and whatever. And you say, well, yeah, actually, I agree. I've done that research with you, but do you know what grass-fed beef costs? Right? It's like 3 times the cost.
Yeah. And
I just don't have the money for that. Okay. Are you actually making your decision from your values? Or could you choose to do other things to save money to be able to redirect funds into buying grass-fed beef? If that's the case, that's a complete hypothetical. Like I don't have a stance on what type of meat you necessarily should be eating. But the other thing is we'll say to somebody, well, it's not worth it to me to say something to this group of people that might be inflammatory or that might cause them to be upset, because I'd really like to get a client out of this room. And, if I upset these people by actually standing on my principles and letting something they said go past, then are you acting on your values? Are you making the decision on your values, or are you making your decision on the fear that you won't get the type of client that actually resonates and aligns with you if you stand up and say something? Mm-hmm. Or are you making the decision that your value is actually, I want clients regardless of what their beliefs are in this particular case. And so therefore I'm not willing to stand up and say that. Do you have to offend everybody around you and plant a flag and wave around to be living your values? No, not necessarily. But so many of us, the values that we are actually acting on and making decisions from aren't the ones we say they are. Like my 3 core values are personal responsibility, freedom, and abundance, right? But at the same time, there have been times in my life when I'm like, I really need the money, or I really, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and put an offer together, a package together, and put it out there and sell it in the hopes that I can get $10,000 this month, because I'm a little short of what I want, even though I said to myself that I'm never ever gonna run that package again, because I don't actually help these people. I don't get along with these people very well, or whatever that case may be. I've done that, despite one of my primary values being abundance, believing that there's plenty out there, there's plenty here around me, and that I'll get what I need. And, whether that's, law of attraction stuff, or whether it's just believing that I have the talent and ability to get what I need to get, doesn't really matter. It's really, really easy for us as humans, especially when we don't have the full bank account, to make our decisions based on, I don't know if I have enough money, or I don't want to be seen as a jerk, or I want people to like me, or whatever these sub values are that aren't actually our primary values.
So how does one go about prioritizing that? Like when they come to a decision-making situation and they're conflicted against the values versus the account versus other things.
Gotcha. So it depends on where you are, at what time you're coming to it. So one of the conversations that I've had with many a coach is, if you are coming to a conversation with a prospective client, and the feeling in your head is, I need this client, I need this person, I need their fee, right, to pay my bills, whatever. The actual answer is, you don't need the client. You need a job. You need something that will allow you, without violating your principles, to have the cash flow or support that you need, so that you don't need a client, so that you don't put yourself in those situations where you're likely to abandon your values to get the money, right? Because you feel like you're in that position of need. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got to have food, you've got to have shelter, you've got to have air before anything else really matters. So first of all, get yourself to the point where you're not struggling, where it's not a case of my primary value is survival, right? Because for almost every human being, regardless of what we say, when we get to, the top of Maslow's pyramid is self-actualization, which is where you can live by values and, decide that you're going to make a difference in the world. The bottom level is survival. And if we're at that bottom level, a lot of those values, a lot of those higher principles that a lot of us want to have and want to live by, they're replaced by, I need to eat, right? So the first step is get yourself to a place where you're not having to need to eat or sacrifice your values to eat. And you have the ability, for the most part, in Western society to make those decisions, right? Like if you don't believe in some cause or another, or some particular set of values, and you need a job, unless literally the only employer that you can physically get to espouses those values, the odds are you can find a different job or a different way to make money. I say job, but a different way to bring in the income that you need that doesn't require going to work for that guy. Right? Once you've done that, once you're no longer in that position of it's a case of survival versus values, then it's taking the time to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why would I choose to engage in whatever behavior or make whatever choice? What's the payoff? Because there's always a payoff, even for the things that we think are self-destructive, the things that we are told are terrible for us, the things that we know better than, but we do them anyway. We do them because there's a payoff. So what is my payoff? And once you can ask and answer that question and make yourself aware of why you would make that decision, then you can ask yourself, oh, okay, if this is my real reason for making that decision, is that actually in alignment with my values or not? And if it's not, if you're aware of it, you are more likely to be able to make that right choice, or that different value choice. Or you say to yourself, you know what, actually, based on my past behaviors, maybe I should stop saying that abundance is a value of mine. I consistently, every time I'm given a choice to choose abundance or something else, choose the something else. Yeah. Right? So being honest with yourself, there's nothing wrong with going, you know what, I was wrong. I misjudged my values. Or over time going, you know what, I used to value this. I've realized that doesn't actually fit what's important to me either anymore or ever was. I'm going to be honest with myself and those people around me and say, no, actually my actual value is this. Right?
Yeah. Cool. So for people who are already past that stage of the survival aspect of it,
yep,
and they want to get a message out there because that message really, really holds true to their values, right? But right now with social media and all this other stuff, cancel culture, there's a very, very fine line as to what you can or cannot say without getting completely obliterated in social media. So for people who want to get that message out there, but are afraid of the feedback, how do you navigate around that?
Gotcha. So what are you afraid of? That's the question. What are you afraid of? Because there are any number of people who have been canceled, right? They worked really hard. Like cancel culture and this whole societal thing that we've sort of been living in has been around long enough now that people have taken into account. They've hired their PR teams and whatever, and they've worked really hard to stay on this invisible straight and narrow line and straight off of it and wound up being canceled. And in quite a few cases, that's turned out to be the best thing ever for them, because instead of working so hard to protect this fake version of themselves, they could actually be who they are, say what they think, and attract the people that support them, that feel that way, that share those values. And it's amazing how much of a relief it is. And I don't care what part of the political spectrum or wherever you are. Once you've stepped up and said, this is who I am, this is what I value, this is who I serve. And you don't have to hide anymore. You are who you are. And there are people who aren't going to like you. There are people who are going to be mad at you. There are people who are going to try and cancel you. But there's also going to be a group of people who are going to come out and say, oh, thank goodness, someone else who thinks the way that I do, someone else who believes the way that I do, who shares my values. I am so glad I found you. Right. And, it depends on who you want to do business with and what your actual values are. Generally speaking, and I speak both from my own personal experience of having been through this in my life and from countless clients. If you are scared that you're going to lose your business, you're going to lose everyone's respect, or everyone who matters respect, or whatever, if you let the truth be known, you're doing it wrong. And you're going to be, you're lying to yourself. You're being someone that you're not. You're hiding something that you shouldn't be hiding. We all have skeletons in our closets. We all have things we'd rather not people find out about, but it's better to own those things. Now, I'm not a believer in radical transparency, like that whole concept where you're just going to show up looking like crap and say, this is me, take it or leave it. And this idea of radical transparency or radical honesty is very often used as a bludgeon. It's used as an excuse to just be rude to people and just be like, screw you, I don't care. If you don't like me, F off, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, that's not cool. Like, we still have to live in a polite society. We still have to be able to talk to people that we don't necessarily agree with on every issue, because guaranteed there's nobody out there that you agree with on every single issue, right? So you're going to have to be able to have conversations to be able to interact socially. So there is that. But at the same time, you don't want to create this completely artificial persona of who you think people want you to be. Because when you do that, without fail, someone will find the hole, someone will find the secret and out you, and it's all going to come crashing down anyway.
I see. When people get past that, let's say people get past that part, okay, and they go, you know what, I got it done. I know who I am. I go out there and pursue this or go and spread this message. But then you have close family and friends who do it for the love of protecting you, who tell you don't do it, or who are naysaying it because they want to protect you because it's too risky and whatnot. How do you navigate through that? Because lots of people who want to do things are being held back because they don't want to be that person that everybody else is telling them not to be.
Right. So again, that comes back to, what are you scared of? Right. Who are you being? Who you are, or are you being who everyone wants you to be? Now, there's a certain, there is a need at times, and there is a value in fitting into societal norms to a certain extent, right? Sociopaths and psychopaths, very, very rare, but even they, for the most part, tend to understand that if I act this way, where everybody can see me, it's going to be negative to my plans, right? And most people who run into those types of character traits, or people with those types of character traits, realize that it's dangerous for them and for society, and et cetera. So there's a certain value in fitting into society to a certain extent, but not to the point necessarily of completely being something that is antithetical to your values, right? When you have family and friends who are saying to you, don't say this, don't do this, don't be that way. Again, we go back to, what's the payoff? Why are they arguing that? And quite often it seems like, and they'll have convinced themselves, and we like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So we'll believe that it's because, well, they want the best for us, right? They're looking out for our best interests, but are they really? And I'm not insinuating that they have this hidden agenda where they're trying to bring you down. Occasionally there are some of those folks, but it's not always. And if it is there, it's often, I don't like the term subconscious, but they often aren't aware of why they're doing it, right? The human brain really likes patterns. The human brain really likes consistency. We like it when the people around us that we interact with on a regular basis fit into the neat little box that we have put them in. This is our story. We're the hero. Everyone else is an NPC or a bit player, or they might be a larger or smaller, but everyone else is secondary to our story as far as our brains are concerned, right? And so we like everyone to fit in neat little boxes. I have put you into this box. You are the smart guy who knows how to make money with real estate, with speaking, with all these things that you are good at. You're another coach. Therefore, I expect certain types of behavior from you. I expect to hear certain types of advice from you. I expect you to show up in a certain way. Typically, when I see you in public, you're going to be wearing your vest, you're going to be wearing a tie, you're going to be wearing a collared shirt, right? That's who you are in my head. So when you show up in a hoodie, talking about how, you know what, YOLO and money doesn't mean all that much, and, you know, dude, screw the man. What you really need to do is go live in a van down by the river. I'm gonna be like, what happened? This is not the Fong that I know. You're not in your box. What's going on? And that causes problems for me, because now I have to do all of this work to readjust my expectation level. And all of this is again, mostly not done consciously. Nobody actively thinks I'm pissed off because Fong is acting differently, right? You're disrupting my worldview of who you are because you're not showing up in the way that I'm used to having you in your life. It's just kind of how our brains work. And so if you change or seem to change your values, or you bring attention that other people consider to be negative onto yourself, that splashes over onto them. And so part of their value of self-protection is kicking in, and they're asking you to don't rock my boat. But even if it is to a certain extent altruistic, where they're saying to you, no, I really believe, Fong, that I am looking out for you. I'm really looking out for your best interest. It has nothing to do with my best interest. It's still coming from a place of fear. They're afraid that if you do what you're doing or what you're considering doing, that it's going to hurt you. So the question that I would ask that person is, what happens if I don't? You're telling me not to deliver this message, not to post this YouTube video, not to stand up and say this thing on stage, whatever it is. You've told me what you're afraid of happens if I do. If I do, what happens? And maybe they haven't. Maybe you have to ask the question, what is it that you think will happen if I do that? And they'll tell you, well, people are going to hate you. You're never going to get another client, et cetera, et cetera. You go, okay. Is that true? Right. And so Wayne Dyer has that question in his book, Excuses Be Gone. Right. He says, one of the things that you can do is you can ask the question, is that true? And our definition of true is 100%. There is literally zero possibility that it could be anything else. That's the only way that you can answer yes to, is it true? If it's not, if there's any possibility of it being something else, then it's not necessarily true. And now we have two possible options. The thing you've said is true, or for the sake of easy argument, the opposite. So for example, you go out and you release this video, everyone is going to hate you. You're going to be labeled a pariah. You're going to be run out of town. You will never get business again. Is that true? Well, no, it's not 100% true. So the opposite is possible, that a certain group of people that is large enough to support my business and actually blow it up and take me to the next level will raise their hands and go, absolutely, this is my guy. This is my person. How can I throw money at you and do business with you? Okay. So if either one of those is possible, regardless of what the percentage chance is, if either one of them is possible, you then have a choice. Which one, you can choose which one to believe or to behave as if it's true. And the question for you then is, which one is likely to move you forward? Is it staying here and hiding and believing that if I say this thing that I want to say, that I'm going to lose everything? Or is it believing that if you say the thing that you want to say and be true to your values is going to actually lead you to the right people at the right time, the right opportunities, et cetera? Which one lets you move forward? Then my recommendation to you is choose to do the one that lets you move forward. Right. And if neither of them will, then maybe we need to ask a different question.
Do you have a personal decision or a story that you could relate to that was very, very challenging for you to make a decision on?
They all seem less challenging once I've made them.
But that's also the reason, like once you make that decision, all of a sudden everything kind of just fades away and you focus on that one thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're ego people, right? So when the ego gets involved, well, once you've said something is true, your ego immediately steps in and says, my job now is to prove that, is to defend that statement, defend that as true. And it will look for every possible proof that that statement is true. And it will defend against, take umbrage against, and deliberately push away out of your sight anything that might prove that it's not true, right? Which is why it can be very interesting to go, what this person who absolutely disagrees with everything that is important to me is saying has merit. Once you've said that, now your ego has to go find proof that that's true, that what they're saying might have merit, which makes it a little easier to not demonize the enemy. But difficult decisions to make. Coming to Canada was one. I was in Tennessee going to university, and I had actually just gotten a job offer from the Walt Disney Company. And I was supposed to move to Florida and go to work for them that next summer. And then I found out that I could come to the University of Calgary, transfer all of my stuff, and it wouldn't affect like my GI Bill would still pay for the school and all that kind of fun stuff. And this really neat girl that I had met who was from Canada, and we'd been dating long distance for about 6 months. I could be in her same city and give that relationship a shot. Mm-hmm. Now, most relationships, especially relationships that have been long distance, don't work out very well. So I had to choose dream job or possible dream relationship, moving to another country, all that kind of fun stuff, potentially getting trapped up there, et cetera, whatever. So that was it. You'd think that'd be an easy decision to make for a 25-year-old young man. Go with the girl. And that's what I eventually decided to do. But it took a bit for me to work through and go, which one's the right decision for me, right? Because I'd be abandoning this potential dream job and career track, moving through business and entertainment, or the entertainment business, for who knows what.
Yeah.
Made the decision, came to Canada, wound up marrying the girl, divorced her 10 years later, or she divorced me. We divorced each other. We still have a good relationship and we got 2 kids, but making that decision was a difficult one to make. The next decision 10 years later, not the next decision. It's not like I had no other decisions for 10 years, but the decision to let that marriage end was another tough decision, right? Because I had to deal with the beliefs of, am I a bad husband? Am I a bad father? Is it better to stay together no matter what, regardless of the situation? Or is it a case of, if she doesn't want to be happy with me, she's never going to be happy with me no matter what I do? Which belief let me move forward, right? Now, one could potentially argue that the is it true question might have been, she's never going to be happy with me no matter what I do. Is that true? Well, I could have said no. Well, then the opposite is, well, she could be I could win her right back over, be completely love struck for the rest of my life. We could be happy together forever after. Which one allows me to move forward? But I'd already gone that direction, and tried that for a while, and it wasn't making either of us happy. So the next question was, okay, well, maybe I need to go back the other way and say the best thing that lets us both move forward was to decide that she's not going to be happy no matter what, as long as we're together, right? And then once I'd done that, moved out of the basement, was actually sleeping on my office floor. A lot of people would question me and go, are you sure you made the right decision here? This is moving forward. You've taken on a ton of debt. You're paying what little money you're making is going to your ex-wife and the kids. You're still working for your ex-father-in-law, like all these different things that all seemed like backward steps. But the value decision was, personal responsibility, right? She has to choose to be happy. She's repeatedly choosing not to be happy with me. And personal responsibility for me. I'm not making whatever choices it was that I needed to make that would allow her to make the choice to be happy with me. So, right. So yeah, making that hard decision to agree to end the marriage, to move out, to deal with all the financial stuff, and still try and be a good dad for my kids. Tough decision to make. But now, 12 years, 13 years later, married to a woman that I love deeply, have two great teenage kids, live in a great house. It's tough to say that was a bad decision.
It sounds like when you're going through that whole history, that in order for this to work, you need to be a very logical thinker. And therefore, how does the emotion tie into that? Do you kind of tame the emotion a little bit, or at any point do you let the emotions kind of drive your decisions as well?
We all let emotions drive our decisions. Like, we make decisions emotionally. We then use logic to rationalize those decisions. Our values can be tied to our emotions. What we don't want to do is just be reactionary and let our reactions in the moment make our decisions. So feel the emotions, let the emotions happen, come through you. I often complain now that I don't get to enjoy being angry anymore. Like, when you get mad, you're like, I get to be mad. And I don't get to do that for very long, because immediately, I've been doing this for so long, I've got all the tools, and I help people with implementing those tools, that immediately my brain starts going, well, why are we mad? What are we mad at? What has irritated us now? What's the payoff for being angry? What is it that we're trying? Anger is merely a vehicle to get to 90% of the time, it's to get to the value of significance. So what has made me feel insignificant here? Okay. Am I in the right? Is there a different decision that I could make now? What's the best decision to make moving forward? That all kicks in and starts going. The emotion is still bouncing around in there. I'm not ignoring the emotion. The first thing I do is say, I'm feeling angry. Right? I'm pissed. I'm feeling pissed. What I don't do is then take a long series of actions, each one playing off of the other, all of them driven by anger, and let anger just drive the bus onward into infinity. Right?
I can just do that now. Like, once you're angry, all of a sudden you completely freeze, and he's going through his steps. He's going through the questions right now.
Yeah, no, I'll raise my voice. I'll say, that's bullshit. That's asinine, whatever. Right. So when I find myself doing that, what happens where the process kicks in is, instead of leaning into that and looking for the fight like I would do when I was younger, once I realize it's going on, I try to get space. I'm like, no, I need to take a break. I'm pissed off right now, or I'm feeling pissed off right now. Can we take 5 minutes? I need to go, or I go for a walk or whatever. And while I'm on the walk, and this is typical of men, it's different for women. Gottman has done a ton of study on this, and I forget, there's a number of other doctors, psychologists and doctors, that have strapped a bunch of wires to people's heads and watch what happens when they have fights and stuff. And men are terrible at this. If we go away for 20 minutes, we are very likely to spend that entire 20 minutes thinking about what we're going to say when we come back to start the fight again. Right. Whereas a woman can go away biologically, and as long as somebody isn't saying to her, you need to get revenge, you need to get retribution, you need to go back in and fight, as long as she doesn't have somebody in her ear telling her that that's what she needs to do, she'll calm right down within 20 minutes. Right. If she's got someone in her ear telling her to think about revenge or to think about the fight, she actually gets more upset, not because she wants to go back and have more of a fight, but it actually is the flight of fight or flight kicks in. She doesn't want to go back and have the conversation at all if she thinks that there's going to have to be this going on. Yeah. Again, broad strokes, there are exceptions to every biological rule, but generally speaking, that's true. But for me, I've learned how to go take that break, give myself something else to think about, or ask myself, why might the other person be right? I'm one of those people that if you try and pin me down in an argument and make me capitulate and admit that you're right there in the fight, you're not going to happen. Right? It won't happen. But if you plant that seed and point out to me that I might be wrong, or there might be a different way to look at it, and then back off and let me go off on my own, I will look at your argument and go, okay, maybe, and then I'll come back and be like, hey, you know what? I was wrong. You should probably change that. And you had a really good idea. Right. So the emotions are there. The emotions are part of who we are. And it's not so much that you have to tamp them down. In fact, trying to stuff them down is a recipe for an explosion later. It's a recipe for hating yourself, for not acting on your own values, right? Because if we're angry, or if we're feeling any emotion, it's us telling ourselves that there's a rule that's been violated, or a rule that's been met, or that there's a need that we are striving towards. Anger, like I said, 90% of the time or more, it's a vehicle to meet a need for significance. We feel insignificant. Somebody has made us feel insignificant or less significant than we believe we should be. And the fastest way to get our own sense of significance back is to get pissed off. It's a lot like using a jet fighter on afterburner to get from, the ring road to downtown Edmonton. It's going to get you there real quick, but you're going to do a lot of damage, and it's going to burn a lot of fuel, right? So it's not necessarily the most efficient vehicle, but it will get you there. So where was I going with all of this? Sorry. It comes down to, it's okay to have the emotions. It's okay to feel the emotions. It's okay to say thank you for the emotions, because there's part of you, when you feel emotions, there's part of your body, part of your mind trying to tell you something is important, even if they're good emotions. So it's totally cool to be like, hey, thanks. This is awesome. I'm feeling this. Now what do I do with it? Just don't let the emotions make the long-term decisions.
Now, for somebody like you who's had the training, who's done it multiple times throughout the years and whatnot, there must be something that you do on a daily basis to maintain that type of mentality, that type of mindset. So what is your kind of ritual or your routine when you wake up?
Mostly it's to wish I had a better routine when I wake up. My good routines don't actually kick in until afternoons, evenings. I'm more of an afternoons, evenings guy. I wake up. I'm not one of those wake up at 5 a.m. and grab the world by the horns and you'll be super successful kind of guys. I'm a wake up when my body needs me to wake up kind of person, which typically is between 7 and 8. I will then stagger down to my office, and I'm a religious person, so I will read scripture for a while and do some studying there. I have a notebook. I've experimented with lots of different types of starting your day journals and notebooks and things like that. And I'm always fiddling with what's the new one now. So I'll play with whatever that is. Generally speaking, I've found doing a quick review of what's the most important thing to do today. What are some of the other things that I want to do today? But they're secondary to what's most important. Who is most important today? How do I need to show up for them? And just sort of checking what I want to do that day, looking at the calendar, seeing what are the things that I can't avoid that are already there. And then I have a good idea of what's going on in my day. From there, then I'll get up, I'll go, on the good days, I'll go do a little bit of exercise. On the ones that are not as good, I won't. Either way, then go take a shower, have a very light breakfast. I usually don't eat until after 10. That's pretty much it. I'll do some meditation or different versions of types of meditation there. And then when I go to bed at night, I'll usually do some sort of audible earbuds in, listening to some form of either a meditation or sometimes I'll try a self-hypnosis. I don't really see those work for me very often, but it's just that a meditative type of walking me to sleep, giving me something for my mind to focus on that isn't the day. And it's like focus on being asleep or focus on something that I want. Usually that's, focusing on improving my self-discipline or improving my excitement is not the right word, but motivation, those types of things. So I'll listen to one of those for like 15, 20 minutes while I go to sleep. And I usually never remember the end of it. I just have the timer set and it stops. And then I wake up in the morning with my earbuds wrapped around my neck and start my day all over again.
Cool. For yourself, I know you're the host of the podcast, the Profits for Coaches. Tell us more about that and why people need to tune into it.
So Profit for Coaches is, it's actually relatively new. It's only been around not quite 2 years, actually, as far as a brand. About half of my clients for most of my career have been coaches, consultants, experts in that mental space. I rent my brain for a living space. But I never stood up and announced that. I never said I help coaches because I hate the coaches industry. I think it's mostly a prey on coaches industry because most coaches suck at running businesses because they're technicians. They're good coaches. They're not good business owners necessarily. And so I think there are a lot of great people out there who need great coaches. And there are a lot of good and great coaches out there that don't stay in business for very long. And a mentor of mine said at one point, a couple of years ago, actually beginning of the pandemic, he said, why are you so against standing up and saying that you help coaches? And going back to what we talked about earlier.
What are you afraid of?
Right. I said, I don't want to get any of that ickiness on me. I don't want to be rolled in with those guys who are just complete slime. And well, they're not slime. A lot of them are really good guys, but just that business model that's out there of taking coaches who are struggling to make 30, 50, maybe $100,000 a year and telling them, if you just pay me $15,000, I'll give you my video course. And in 90 days, we'll teach you how to make and sell your own video courses and you'll make $1 million. But when you look at their business model, you're spending 700, 800,000 of that $1 million on your ad spend, your high ticket closers, your appointment setters, your affiliate marketing, all that kind of fun stuff. So you're working your tail off to build $1 million business where you don't actually do any coaching with clients anymore. And you're only keeping about $200,000. $200,000, 20% profit is like the cream of the crop for those types of business models. So I hate that model. And I said, I don't want to be lumped in with that. He said, well, the fact that you don't want to be lumped in with that, the fact that you believe so strongly that it can be done differently means you need to plant your flag. You need to go out there and say, this is who I am. So, and I knew full well that that's what I teach. So I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. So he called me on my own bullshit. And so I went out and I planted the flag and I said, if you are a coach who wants to be making $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year and keeping most of it, working 20 to 35 hours a week, the vast majority of that with clients. So yes, we're building you a job. It's your business, right? You're the one working with clients. If you're not somebody who loves the scale up model, because you got to scale, like if you just want to be a coach, you want to have a good coaching job, a good coaching business that you own, where most of the time you're working with the clients you love. So there's a ton of people out there that love that. And you can be making $600,000 a year in that coaching business and keeping 450, 500,000 of it very easily without stressing yourself out, without doing more than 10 hours a week of your admin business stuff that nobody really wants to do because they want to coach clients. So that's what Profit for Coaches is built to create for people. And yes, I've helped people, like there are clients who want to do 7 figures, who want to do their $1 million, but still be doing coaching. And that's fine. We can do that. It's not that hard. But most of them, they want that good, solid, mid 6-figure, high 6-figure coaching business that allows them to work on their own schedule. So Profit for Coaches is built for that. And the podcast is about giving the information out so that the coaches out there who dream of being that one day, but aren't in a position to work with me one-to-one, they can get that information. They can learn, they can hear what's available. They can get those resources. And if you go back and listen to a podcast from episode 1 to now, and there's only like 80, 90 episodes so far. Like I said, it's almost 2 years old now. If you follow those, everything you need to build a profitable 6-figure coaching practice is there. Now, when you're ready, when you're done to DIYing, or you don't want to waste time DIYing, and you're ready to make the jump and go from that to $300,000 to that $600,000, $700,000 a year, then you want to reach out to me and we'll talk about working one-to-one. But for the most part, the reason the podcast is there is to give people Here's the tools. I believe that all the information is out there. If someone is willing to invest the time to go through, Google everything, go to all of the events, put the money in, sort through what's good for them, what isn't good for them, all that stuff. Nobody needs an expert necessarily, unless they'd like to save thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, in learning experiences, and then learn from someone who's been there and can guide them. In which case, by all means, you definitely need to get a coach and work one-to-one with somebody. But for those who aren't ready to do that yet, that's what the podcast is for.
Awesome. Well, make sure everybody out there tune into that podcast. Sounds like it's an amazing thing. One more quick formal question for you. And that is, if you were back on the world stage and you have one message to share for everybody to remember Jos for, what would that message be?
Oh, goodness gracious. There are lots. I believe that you are here. There are people that you are meant to serve, and you will get farther in life and everything you need in life by seeking out those people and looking for the ways that you can serve them, rather than trying to sell to everybody, trying to be somebody that you're not supposed to be, or make your decisions based on what other people are telling you you have to do. I'm a firm believer that we are all children of our God. We are all designed for some form of greatness, whether it's in this life or the next. We're here to learn, to grow, and to be good stewards of the world that we're on while we're here. And the best way to do that is to find out what your values are and can move you, and how you can then use that to serve the people that are out there that you're supposed to serve. That was not quite as succinct maybe as I would normally put it, but yeah, I believe you can have everything that you need and want in this life and in the life to come by helping and serving the people that you're meant to serve.
Very, very good words to live by. Well, our time has gone through very, very quickly. I love talking to you because you just go on and you have great messages in your stories, and I've learned a lot. But before I let you go, I got 5 quick questions for you. Give me the first thing that comes to mind.
Lightning round. Okay, let's go.
All right. Stranded on the desert island. You get one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
One food to eat for the rest of my life, no consequence. Something meat, probably.
In the circus, what role or what part would you like to play?
Probably the conductor, the guy who gets to wear the cool hat. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't entertain everybody, but he points everyone to the people that are going to entertain them. Like everything goes around him, not because he's in control, but because he guides everyone's eyes to what's going to delight and excite them.
Special talent that not many people know about.
I'm really good at telling white and black. So gray areas, things that are gray is not a color. It's just bits and pieces of white and black that are so close together, your eye can't tell the difference. And I have I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. I have for some reason, a great talent at zooming in on that gray and finding the whites and blacks and going, this is actually the white part, this is actually the black part. Make your decision from here.
Awesome. One person that you would love to spend a day with.
One person I'd love to spend a day with, other than my wife. Living, probably Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. In the past, probably any of the prophets, anyone who was considered a prophet, just to see how that works and how that life has been.
Mm-hmm. Tony Robbins shows up to your house. He's hungry. What do you cook for him?
I don't think he's vegan, so probably a steak, asparagus, and fries.
And last question, what is success like? But give me a number from 1 to 4.
3.
1, 2, 3. So how is success like tissue paper?
How is success like tissue paper? The harder you pull on it, the more likely it is to just disintegrate and slip through your fingers. Whereas if you're willing to accept it as it is and fold it gently, you can turn it into anything you want it to be.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So that's how success is like tissue paper. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Best way is probably to email me, Jos at joswillard.com. They can find me, Jos_Willard on the interwebs. But yeah, just email me, Jos@joswillard.com is always the best way to get a hold of me, because I get back to those within 2 days.
Great. And is there anything else you want to leave everybody off of?
Other than, I guess I'd say this. All of the knowledge in the world is out there. There's a ton of it that can be found on this here podcast. So go back and listen to old episodes. But at some point, remember, all the knowledge in the world in your head's not going to do anything until you start applying it. Mm-hmm. So go listen to an episode, whether it's this one or 2, 3, 100 episodes ago of the Peak Potential Success Show. Pick one thing out of it and apply it and start doing it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll end it off. He is Jos. My name is Fong. Until next time. Today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll all see you later.